Welcome to our rhetoric and writing lecture for week 12. This is week 12 of 16 weeks, so we are really, like I said, getting near the end of the semester. We're just going to talk about one topic today. It's got several parts, so it will take about 15 minutes probably, but hopefully reasonably brief on this lecture today. And we're going to talk about modifiers, words that change. So modify means to change, right? If you think about like a car, if you've modified the car, lowered it, put on different rims, done things, that's modification, right? And whatever we do with language is very similar. We can make language a little more high performance by modifying it. And how we do that is we add in adjectives, adverbs, and we're going to also talk about what are called superlatives and comparatives as well. But adjectives and adverbs will be the big topic. And again, because these are easy to misuse, but also without using them, it can kind of leave the writing a little bit dry, a little bit boring. Adjectives and adverbs, of course, these modifiers add a lot to the language. So I'm going to talk about that just a little bit. And if you want more information on this, if you have the Hardbrace Essentials in our main textbook for the class, that's pages HE, that's Hardbrace Essentials 315 to 324. And if you have a different edition than I do, it's section 22A and B, which everything that we'll cover today, I'm taking it right out of that. And this will probably be, covered in one of our quizzes down the road. So we're coming up on probably next week, quiz 4. And I'm sure there'll be something about modifiers in that. You can always go back and watch this video or look at the part in the book before the quiz. All right, so adjectives basically describe nouns. What are nouns? Nouns are people, places, and things, right? And pronouns, they also describe pronouns. Pronouns are not professional nouns. That's my bad English teacher dad joke for the day, but pronouns are words that replace nouns. So if you, instead of me saying Tom all the time, I'm going to say I, right? I don't say Tom would like to go to work tomorrow morning. Tom would like, no, I say I would like to, etc. So pronouns are just words that replace nouns. So we've got nouns and pronouns, and adjectives describe those or add information. I've realized I have some examples in here. I just realized these are from last semester, and they've suddenly become very timely. I think you'll see what I mean if you get through this video. Maybe I should take those out. I don't know. Anyway, he's a controversial person now. He's going to show up in one of our examples here, I think, and his wife. Anyway, didn't do that just specifically because of anyway, you'll see. The proud parents paid for the expensive wedding. So parents is a noun. It's a group of two people, right? And proud is telling how they are. So this part in red is an adjective. It's describing this word. What you'll notice, obviously, in English, adjectives tend to precede, meaning they're before nouns. So you have proud parents rather than parents proud. You have expensive wedding rather than wedding expensive. There may be some times when that's okay to invert, change that order, but generally that's what we do, right? The bride had 4 bridesmaids. So number is a description. It's telling how many, and that can be an adjective. The groom is nervous. So here with a helping verb, I just said there might be a time when there's an exception, right? So if we have this helping verb is, then sometimes the groom is nervous and excited. Our adjectives can follow the verb. All right, let's look at this. This is an example of just, if we were in class, I would ask you to find these, but I'll just go through these real quickly with you. Gertrude Stein is an important writer of modern American literature. So writer is our noun, and literature is our another noun. And of course, literature is like writing stories, like we're reading Sonny's Blues. It's an American literature classic. So these two words are nouns, and if you look somewhere in here, you're going to find words that are modifying these words, giving us more information. What kind of writer? What kind of literature? And so if you wanted to pause this, you could, and I'll give you a second, and then I would come back if we were in class again, obviously, and tell you she was an important writer, and then what kind of literature did she write? She wrote American literature, but specifically modern. So these are both adjectives, again, words that are describing literature or words that are describing writer, an important writer. And again, if you take these words out, these adjectives, the writing becomes very dull. Gertrude Stein is a writer. I mean, that doesn't say very much, right? And so adjectives are super important for not only giving your writing some flavor, but giving it more detail. In 1903, Gertrude Stein, a well-educated, wealthy young female writer, moved from the United States to beautiful and enchanting Paris, France. So we have adjectives describing this noun, writer, and some describing this place, or again, nouns are people, places, and things. Paris, France, and a well-educated, wealthy young female. So you can see this is what kind of writer she was. She's a female writer. She's also well-educated. She's wealthy. She's young. All these things are telling us about Gertrude Stein and what kind of writer or what kind of person she was. How is Paris, France? Well, it's beautiful and it's enchanting. So these are two adjectives modifying Paris, France. In Paris, she started a splendid collection of modern art by famous artists such as Pablo Picasso. So she started a collection. What kind of collection? Splendid. Of art. What kind of art? Modern. So again, you'll notice generally we've got these adjectives preceding, being before the nouns that they modify by famous artists such as Pablo Picasso. So again, these are just examples of adjectives. And again, we'll talk about the placement of adjectives. In other words, where they go in the sentence. So that can be important when you're writing a paper, just making sure when you're kind of editing. It's not something you probably worry about too much while you're writing a rough draft. So these are some sentences about Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. I got to see a really cool exhibit of Frida Kahlo's work this summer over at the College of DuPage, believe it or not. One of the first places in the U.S., I think, that exhibited so much of her work. That was really, really impressive and very crowded, too. There were a lot of people there. That was on the last day of the exhibit. You can place adjectives either before a noun. So we talked about that, right? Young Frida Kahlo. So Frida Kahlo is a noun. It's what's called a proper noun. So we capitalize it because it's a specific person, but still the same rule holds true. The nouns go before, the adjective goes before the noun. Young Frida Kahlo fell in love with Diego Rivera. Or after a linking verb. So we saw that is earlier. Is, was, and were are usually kind of our most common linking verbs. Their relationship was passionate and volatile. So again, up here you've got your adjective before the noun, and because we use this linking verb was, your adjectives will go after. Their relationship was passionate and volatile. And here we have pictures of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, both great artists from Mexico, and still, very well known. There's a movie I've been meaning to watch. Maybe somebody has seen it in the class ever since I went to that exhibit last summer, and I will get around to it. I always have a list of during my break, so maybe this summer break between between spring and summer term, I can watch that movie about Diego Rivera, and mostly it's about Frida Kahlo, I think, but he's obviously in it as her husband. All right. So if you look at this again, what I'd like you to do, if you're watching the video, if you want to pause this and just decide where. So on the left, we have two different sentences. Right on the left, we have this is a pair of sentences. One is correct, one is not. And on the right, we have, a pair of sentences. One is correct and one is not. Let's look at this one. The talented young writer Edgar Allan Poe was not financially successful during his lifetime. Here's Poe down here with the raven. If anybody's a football fan, you might not know this, or maybe you do. If you're a football fan, the Baltimore Ravens are the only professional football team in the NFL that is named for a literary work. It's named for Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. They're the Baltimore Ravens. So trivia, that's what's called an aside. So anyway, but where would your adjective go? The talented young writer or Edgar Allan Poe, the writer talented young? If English is your first language, then generally what most people do is they just hear that. If you are learning English as a second language, then sometimes you have to think about the grammar rule because both of these might sound equally good. But take a second, and so I just say that because I also teach ESL, but I don't know if I have anybody in the class whose first language is not English, but I always like to point that out just in case. All right, so the first one is the best choice if you took a minute to think about it. Because again, we've got our two adjectives, talented, young. They're both modifying writer, and they come before the noun because we're not using it with the helping verb. It's just a noun and these adjectives. So this is the better choice, the first one. Now let's look at this one. Edgar Allan Poe talented was. Edgar Allan Poe was talented. So again, if you read this, you might think this sounds a little bit like Yoda, the way he talks, because he sometimes changes. If you know Yoda from Star Wars, he will change the syntax or word order around in his sentences. So it can sound like that, right? Edgar Allan Poe, talented was. You might have heard that famous one, try not, do, or do not. But talented was kind of sounds like that Yoda, and so we know it's the wrong order. You can just hear it. But again, if you don't hear it that way, you have to think about the rule, which is if we have a helping verb like am, is, are, was, were, we're going to put the adjective after that helping verb usually. Edgar Allan Poe was talented. So second one is the best choice. I'm trying to go through this pretty quickly. I don't want to keep you guys for a long video, especially since grammar. I know that's not always the most fun thing to do, but this is a little involved, this next chart, so it'll take me just a minute, but I think this is not something I recommend that anybody memorizes. Again, most of this we just do by ear. We hear it that way. But if for some reason you don't hear it that way, you could always just Google order of adjectives. If you were writing a long sentence, you had all these adjectives, because actually there is a rule, which I'm going to share here with you, for why we put adjectives in sentences in a certain order. So here we have a sentence. We bought 2. So 2 is what's called a determiner. It tells us the number, you know, or the amount. We bought 2 beautiful. This is what's I would call a quality or judgment. You're saying how this thing is. We don't have anything for size or shape, but we bought 2 beautiful old red wool rugs. So this is our whole sentence, right? These adjectives would have to go in that order to be correct, by age, color, you know, again, quality, determiner, age, color. There's nothing about origin, type, and rug. So the adjectives actually go in that order. And again, most people just hear it that way, so it's fine. But if not, you would have to know this rule, and you could always just Google order of adjectives if you're ever trying to figure this out. If you're writing a sentence, trying to edit a paper, again, not something to think about on the rough draft, but when you're in that editing stage, revising. Santa Fe is a, so it's 1, right? The number. Is a lovely? What quality? Is it size or shape? It's a large. Age? We don't know. Old color. And its origin, it's New Mexico. And the desert is a type, and it's a town. So Santa Fe is a lovely, large New Mexico desert town. If you were going to use all those adjectives in a sentence, this would be the order you want to put them in. So let's look at how this works with another sentence. This is about Catherine of Aragon, who was a princess in the 16th century, going way back, right? So on the left, we have one version of this sentence. And on, right. So the 17-year-old charismatic Henry VIII married a Spanish young beautiful princess, Catherine of Aragon, in 1502. She was petite, lovely girl. Okay, so again, we put the adjectives in parentheses on the left side, and over here you've got to decide what would be the order. Is it this first one? Is this good? Or is this second one better? So take a moment if you want to pause your video and just think about it and see if the first, and again, if you wanted to go back in the video, you could actually go back and look at how we do this: number, judgment or quality, size or shape, age, color, origin, type, and then your noun is at the end, right? So if you want to pause it and just decide, and I'll give you a second, and then I'll just, like, if you were pausing, and then I'll come back and say that, okay, the 17-year-old charismatic Henry VIII married a Spanish young, beautiful princess, Catherine of Aragon, in 1502. She was petite, lovely girl. Doesn't sound right to me, and I'll tell you why. Let's go back. The charismatic 17-year-old. So we want to say quality or judgment. So charisma, having charisma, being charismatic is a quality. Whoops. And then we would go to her age, maybe. Quality, judgment, age should be after that. So we know that this one has the charismatic first. This one has the age first. So this one is probably better. And same thing here, beautiful, young. So quality, whoops. Quality is beautiful, and then young, Spanish prince. These are, and this is origin too, right, where she's from. And then lovely, petite. We have quality, and then you can see size or shape comes after quality. So you might just hear this but the second one is the best choice on that one. And if not, you could always even just Google again order of adjectives if you were confused by this ever. And it's only going to come up if you're using multiple adjectives in one sentence. All right, so punctuating adjectives. Just a real quick something to say about this. This is what I would call persnickety. I don't know if that's that's a real word, but this is very picky, right? So this is not something to worry about. Again, and I might put it on a quiz question, but you're probably not going to have this come up too often. But just in case, let's look at this rule really quickly. Commas between adjectives of equal weight. And so again, here's my second dad joke of the day. Do you have a scale? How do you know the weight of an adjective? And of course, what they mean is kind of like type or value, not really like weight, obviously. In other words, if two adjectives describe a quality, place a comma between them. So let's look at that. So if the adjectives are equal weight, meaning equal kind of the same type, then Shah Jahan presented the lovely rare sculpture to the princess. So you would put a comma because these are both about sort of the quality of something. It's lovely, it's rare. They're similar, right? Rare is telling about what kind of quality is. It's rare. It's unusual. Lovely is telling it's really great. It's the quality, or So these are similar adjectives, and we want to put a comma between them to separate them because they're basically doing the same job. Do not place commas between adjectives of unequal weight. For example, if one adjective describes a quality and another describes a place of origin or color, remember we had that whole list just a moment ago of order of adjectives. So if they're not in the same category, you don't need a comma. So Shah Jahan presented the rare Greek. So rare is telling the quality, Greek is telling the origins from Greece. So we don't need a comma. Again, like I said, super persnickety, this little rule here, but it is a rule that's important when you're learning about adjectives. So I share that with you. All right, adverbs. This is the second main thing we're going to cover today. And adverbs are basically words that I always think I remember it as they add information to verbs, usually verbs. Here's my controversial examples here that I did not do recently, but these are from last semester. Adverbs add information to verbs. So let's look at a couple of examples here. If you're reading over that, it says Will Smith fell in love with Jada Pinkett quickly. So a lot of times you will, not always, but adjectives will have an ly. Adverbs rather. That's a very common thing. Fell in love. How? So a lot of times you're asking the question, how did something happen? When did it happen? Where did it happen? Or to what extent it happened. So how did he fall in love? He fell in love quickly. So that is an adverb modifying. Paparazzi often take photos of celebrities. So take, and notice this tells it's an adverb of time. When do they take? Often. So again, this is answering that question. A lot of times adjectives, if you want to know if you have an adjective or an adverb, you can ask yourself the question, is it modifying a noun or is it modifying a verb? So you have to know which of the nouns and verbs, but often take. And again, we'll have a couple of quiz questions probably about these. I think it's just an important thing to know because again, being able to use adjectives and adverbs correctly, like I said before, it just enlivens your writing a lot. Will and Jada's fame grew. How did it grow? Rapidly. How rapidly? Quite rapidly. So these are both adverbs. One is modifying the verb grow. The other one is actually modifying another adverb. So adverbs can sometimes add information or modify verbs or adverbs as well, other adverbs. People are extremely curious about famous couples. So how they're curious, they are curious, and in this case, extremely curious. Curious is an adjective, right? It's telling how people are. And so in this case, the adverb is actually modifying an adjective. And you'll see that there's an ly here. So again, don't worry too much if this is not just, this may either be something you learned before and it's coming back to you, or it might be a little bit not sticking, it might be a little confusing. So don't worry if that's the case. This is not going to make or break your paper for an essay, but it will really, if you can use adjectives and adverbs and add those in, it will really help your writing. So, but again, it's not the make or break thing. It's just sort of icing on the cake. Adverbs often end in ly. So in fact, you can change many adjectives into adverbs by adding ly endings. For example, honest is an adjective, so he was an honest person, or it can be an adverb. I honestly want to talk to you, I want to talk to you honestly, right? So your action, and then the adverb is a word that's telling us about an action. So that becomes a different part of speech. It goes from an adjective to an adverb just by adding that ly. If you add ly to a word that ends in l, then your new word will have a double L, like joyfully, right? You take this word joyful, which is usually an adjective telling about something, and then you add ly, making it an adverb, and you double the L. So this is just a spelling rule. If you add ly to a word that ends in e, keep the e. Exceptions to this rule, of course there have to be exceptions, are true and do, where you drop the e. These are just spelling rules. Passionate becomes passionately, where you keep the e. But oftentimes you drop an e when you add ly. So again, just some forms of the adverb, and then where do you put them? These are called frequency adverbs, meaning it tells how often something happens. And these words are always, never, ever, often, sometimes, and usually. and place frequently adverbs before regular, present, and past tense verbs. This gets very complicated, so I won't go too much into this, but just be aware that these frequency words are adverbs. Usually, always, never, ever, often, sometimes, because it's telling us about how the time that something recurs or when it happens. All right, so let's see if we can correct these adverbs. I just put a few errors in here, and just read through this if you would. And when you come back, if you want to like pause this and just read through these, see if you can correct those underlined. Each one of those underlined words has a problem, and it's one of the rules that we just talked about. So I will imagine that you paused it, or if you didn't, that's okay too. But let's look at this. When she met Raoul, Marnie thought he was nice, but just as a friend. From the beginning, Raoul was romantic, interested in Marnie. Problem there, right? So if we go back and look at our rules, romantic is an adjective, but we want to make it an adverb, so we can probably add ly there. Because they were in the same class, they saw frequently each other. Okay, now we talked about the order, when adjectives and adverbs, how they're going to be ordered. There's a problem there. They often talked, studied, and attended campus events together. Eventually, I think we said we usually double the L. What was our rule here? If it ends in L, you're probably going to have a double L. So eventual becomes eventually. So that's a problem. All right, let's look at the correction. So here's what we would do. We would make it romantically from an adjective to an adverb. Frequently, saw him. We just change the word order and then double L for eventually. Like I said, these are really picky things. They're not necessarily the most important, but I think most important thing is being able to use adverbs and adjectives in your writing. All right, we're going to, I think we'll stop there. There are some other things, but they're not going to come up in the quiz, and they're a little less probably commonly used. So I will pause there to keep this video reasonably brief. And as always, if you have any questions, send me an email or come to my office hours. I'm in face-to-face office hours Monday through Thursday from 12 to 1 and 317C at main campus. And then I have online office hours 2 days a week as well. So let me know if you have any questions. And remember, we're working on Essay 6 this week, which is revising Essay 5. Thanks for watching this.